Hello there, Mad Mike here, and welcome back to the channel. And today we're going to talk about something that's it's been coming up a lot in the last few years with all the '80s remakes that have been coming out or continuations of '80s franchises, um, and that's the idea of remaking Back to the Future. Now, this was proposed. This has been proposed actually, I think, at least 3 or 4 times over the last couple of years, and every time, pretty much, it's been shot down by Robert Zemeckis. And why am I blanking on the other guy that owns the rights to Back to the Future? Um, and basically, both of them said that yeah, no, it's not happening. As long as we're alive, we are not allowing that to happen. Um, which I think is a good stance to take on that because let's look at this from a certain type of a lens. So, Back to the Future, an amazing movie, 1985. So many iconic characters that Christopher Lloyd's Doc Brown and uh, Marty McFly, played by Michael J. Fox. An amazing film, and then obviously two very good follow-ups as well to round out a very good trilogy, all directed by Zemeckis. Um, and if you are going to try and reboot that, how are you supposed to do that? It's one of those things. So if whatever year the movie is going to take place in, whether it's going to be a direct remake of Back to the Future, or whether it's going to take place in current day, if you're going to do that, then okay, we're going to go back 30 years in the past. By then, by the time the film actually gets made, um, it would probably be at least 2024, 2025. So that means you're going back to 1985. So you're just going back to the present of the first movie. Like, I get the gimmick of it, but it's really really dumb in the execution because now it's just like, okay, now we're just going to do this where we're going to go back in time every 30 years. Um and it's one of those kind of just stupid little things that really do. Oh, actually, sorry, I stand corrected. That would be 40 years. 30 years would have been 2015. I'm a dipshit. No, but it would have been 40 years. But even then, do you just every like certain number of like 3 or 4 decades, do you just make a Back to the Future movie and then you go all the way back to the very beginning again? Um, it does have a little bit of a nuance to it, just from a like a symmetrical standpoint of like, oh, so that's gonna happen, so that's gonna happen. Um, but other than that, it doesn't ring true because again, if you're using the same characters, you're never going to be able to recapture what you had in that original film with Christopher Lloyd and Michael J. Fox. That dynamic in that film was great, and then also Michael J. Fox's dynamic with Crispin Glover, who plays his father, and I don't know why I'm blanking on the mother's name because I know the actress. Um, and her relationship with him as well, and the whole family dynamic, and then in the sequels you go into more stuff between him and Doc Brown, and Doc Brown's relationships with other people. So you you get all the fleshing out of the characters that you need to try and recreate that. I think is a distinctive problem because you're not they're going to play around with it. They're going to play around with it and they're going to ruin it because the way it was done by Robert Zemeckis was a perfect execution of that type of an idea. He had the right characters, he had the right actors, he had an amazing script. They had so many people involved in that movie that just wanted it to succeed. Obviously, Steven Spielberg, who was basically the kind of, I always view it as like kind of a directing tree. They make the comparison in the NFL too when you have a coach and then his sub coaches go out and do stuff. There's a lot of that with directors too, and Steven Spielberg has a few of them too, and Robert Zemeckis is one of those, basically kind of his protege. And he came up through that. He really impressed Spielberg with actually a little student film reel that he had made, and he had made a couple bombs before Back to the Future. Before actually winding up making the film. But the thing is that Zemeckis was able to make that film a reality and make everything he wanted in that film into a reality and make us believe it and make us care about it. So the problem that you have in remaking something that is that iconic is you are never going to be able to recapture the nostalgia and the quality of the first film. Even if you were to get the founding people, get Alan Silvestri for the music, and get Robert Zemeckis back to direct or executive producer, something along those lines, and then get like a young director or somebody to take over. Um, one of those situations, I think that you're still going to wind up with an inferior product. It's one of those movies that should never have been, well, I shouldn't say never have been because it hasn't been yet, but it shouldn't be remade. And I went over this a little bit in a video that I had done before about The Crow because the remake of that has been constantly, lifting up and crashing over the past like 5 to 6 years. But it's the idea that sometimes when a film does something special, like what Back to the Future did, you just leave it be because by touching it, by doing it, by bringing it out and kind of parading it out again, you're only diminishing it. You shouldn't be doing that because you're diminishing the image of Back to the Future by trying to remake it at this point. It's like trying to remake Casablanca or Citizen Kane. Nobody has ever. I shouldn't say that. I really hope nobody has ever suggested that in any Hollywood circles. But it's a horrible, horrible idea, and when you boil it down, you're only going to make an inferior product, and you're probably not going to make the money you want to see from it. So is it really worth it at that point? With Back to the Future, everybody wants a franchise these days, and everybody has been pushing for that because it's one of the last 80s franchises to kind of hold out in recent years from the kind of, I don't want to say reboot culture because some of these are sequels, but the revival of 80s nostalgia or the banking of Hollywood on 80s nostalgia, and now kind of even moving into 90s nostalgia now that we move into the 2020s. But it it doesn't really work because banking on that, the people that were actually alive in the 80s, you might get a little bit of a rise out of them, but you're not going to get anything out of the 90s kids. You're not going to get anything out of people that were born in the 2000s, and probably nobody that was around in the 70s and 60s too. So, your demographic is a little kind of slanted in that, and again, it's just popular culture and stuff like that, but it's a little bit slanted, and a lot of the people that were alive then are just going to think it's gimmicky. So that's kind of your problem with dredging up 80s nostalgia in the sense of just parading it around as opposed to actually honoring it. Which, again, if you're going to remake Back to the Future, you are not honoring 80s nostalgia. If you were, you would just leave that movie alone. But this is something that has come up like I said, a few times over the years, but I want to know what your opinion is. Do you think that Back to the Future will ever be remade? Do you think that the it's going to be soon, or will it be a ways down the road again after maybe Robert Zemeckis passes away at some point in the distant future? But would you like to see it remade? Do you not want to see it remade? Do you have any ideas for it if it was to be remade? And put any of your thoughts in the comments below. As usual, I like to listen to them. And hit the bell for notifications, hit the like button, subscribe, and remember, I live my life free of compromise. Do you?